Hello, I'm going to talk about the final project for T217. This is a project to design something for this very beautiful area shown in the photograph, which is called Ditchling Beacon, which is in the south of England. This TMA gives you a chance to demonstrate what you've learnt from right across the module. It's asking you to bring together all the learning that you've done in each of the blocks and to apply it to this particular project. So from block 1, you're bringing design principles. From block 2, you're bringing user research. Block 3, creativity. Block 4, layout design, which you've obviously rehearsed in TMA03. And in block 5, you'll be bringing design for manufacture. So basically, you've rehearsed all of those skills in earlier TMAs. The only one that you haven't done so far is manufacturing. So there's an overall design brief for this TMA. You're being asked to imagine that you've been asked to be an advisor to a design team and you're asked to contribute a design for a national park. It's a fairly recent national park, Ditchling Beacon in the South Downs, and we've chosen that to try and make the assignment as realistic as possible so that the information that you're provided with is based on an area that actually exists. The key aims of the park in Ditchling Beacon are to promote sustainable living and to protect the landscape. And there are all sorts of potential visitors. There are walkers and cyclists, school parties, families, people from heritage organisations. And you have to imagine that they would perhaps like to build a visitor centre. I believe at the moment that there isn't very much at Ditchling Beacon. But imagine if you were trying to do something that's sympathetic with the landscape and the aims of the organisations that look after it. So this is all related to assessment activity 5.1, choosing a starting point. So you're given a little bit of information about the park. It's an area that contains an area of special scientific interest, which means that it's really needs to be conserved. It's part woodland, part grassland, and it's also an Iron Age hill fort with spectacular panoramic views. And it's also part of the South Downs Way, which is a very ancient track. So you'll get people coming along through the area who are actually walking the South Downs Way. And of course, being a beauty spot and somewhere that people like to go, it faces all kinds of environmental challenges, such as erosion from people walking on it all the time, and littering, which is a sad thing that happens a lot in all sorts of outdoor areas now. There are a couple of maps that you'll see on the TMA, but you'll find if you look, there's plenty more information online about the place. So in terms of what you're asked to do, you're asked to choose one of these areas in which to design something. So you can choose from refreshment, recycling, playful engagement, or inclusive design. They all offer different and interesting challenges. I'm going to go through each of them one by one. So if you choose refreshment, you need to imagine that the park would like to generate some income for their conservation efforts by selling refreshments and snacks to visitors. And there are a number of different ways that could be achieved. It could be achieved through mobile refreshment stalls or trolleys of some kind. If you undertake the project, you need to research and design a product that would be suitable for selling refreshments within the context of the park. Another option is to look at ways in which you might encourage visitors to recycle. So thinking about a visitor centre or car park system that would allow people to collect and recycle the waste that they generate. If you choose the project, you need to design a way to encourage the visitors to separate materials and to dispose of them appropriately. So it might be a set of bins or some other form of receptacle, but you may find alternative solutions, for example, ways in which to encourage people to take their waste home by compacting it or in some other way modifying it. There's also the option to look at play and playful engagement. Lots of people of lots of different ages obviously come to a spot like Ditchling Beacon, and it's important to engage the young visitors that come and fuel their enthusiasm for conservation and sustainability and the landscape. So if you choose this project, you need to design either a piece of play equipment or a toy or a game that could be sold in a visitor centre, or some form of exhibit that children can interact with. So whichever option you choose, you need to make sure that your design relates to the park and that it uses a fun and a playful approach to encourage children to think about the issues of sustainability and conservation in a very positive way. And there's a suggestion in the TMA to visit thefuntheory.com, which has some interesting ideas, like, for example, a bin that sounds as if it's really, really, really deep. It's when you throw something in, it sounds as if it takes an age to fall, and then there's a big clunk as it hits the bottom. There's other things like making stairs into a piano keys and so on. Do take a look, because it's quite a fun thing to have a look at. And the fourth option for a design project is to look at inclusive design. So if you might imagine, this is a park with very rough terrain and steep slopes, and that can be really challenging for anybody who has a disability. So if you choose this project, then you need to look at and research the needs of disabled and elderly visitors to devise a product, or I've added in a way, because it might not necessarily be a product, to devise something to help to improve their visiting experience. You might want to consider ways in which they might access and enjoy the beautiful views from the site, for example. And for your research, draw on your members of your family or friends, or even run focus groups. I know it's going to be a bit challenging with coronavirus and having to do everything at a distance. You can't get together with people in the same way, but there's lots of opportunities still to engage with people and have a little bit of fun as you discuss what their needs might be. So something unique in this particular TMA, which you may be interested in, is that if you would like the experience of collaborating, because you think it might be helpful for your CV to have that experience of group work and collaboration, then you can choose to collaborate with someone else in order to generate a set of related products. If you do that, you'll be developing your own designs, but you'll be working with someone else to try and get some kind of coherence about them, and you'll be naming whoever you're working with, but the marking will be based on your own individual contribution. So you're not at risk if you do that. It won't affect your marks adversely if you were to link up with someone and it didn't work quite so well as you might want. But actually, it might be really good just to spin some ideas off somebody else. So if that does appeal, do let me know, and obviously I'll try and link anybody up that might be interested in collaboration. So the first section is an introduction to your research project and also to your user research. So there are four things that you need to include. The first is an introduction to the project, saying broadly what you're aiming to achieve, and also, if you do collaborate, to say who you've collaborated with. Secondly, an account of user research, describing the research that you've undertaken and summarising what you found out from it. So hopefully that might include some pictures. Those might be photographs that you've got from the internet, since you probably won't be able to go to Ditchling Beacon, and nor are you expected to. It might be sketches, though, that thoughts about the ways in which users might want to use the site. And then the third thing contains really two things. Firstly, a design brief and vision. So you've been given a broad brief, which is to design something for the park, but here it's about, well, I want to design a piece of play equipment that does this, this, and this. And in the this, this, and this, you'll be spelling out what your goal will be, what the context of that product or edifice will be, what the constraints are, and what the criteria are. So going back, if you will, to the design brief as discussed in block 2, actually, you're going back to that area and territory and thinking about what you're specifically trying to achieve. And you also want to create a mood board that conveys the look and feel that you have for your vision. So that might be something physical if you've got magazines or other forms of photographs and things around. You might want to just cut them up and make a collage, or you might want to do that digitally with finding images that you like and creating a digital collage, which is a mood board. And this is all related to assessment activity 5.2. So in this first section, I'm going to be looking for appropriate use of user-centered research. So I really hope to see that you might have talked to some other people and thought about ways in which people might want to use the park, or what they might want from, for example, refreshment ban if they were out and about, those kinds of things. I want to see that you're able to identify what user requirements are, and also that you're able to develop a vision for your design. So to really have in mind what you're aiming for, and to be able to start to put that down on paper. And in section 2, just as you've done before in TMA02 and to some extent in TMA03, this is where you're presenting concept designs. And you need to include 5 different ideas that respond to the brief that you've created for yourself. And those only need to be rough sketches or diagrams or models, and it would help to have annotations or descriptions that explain the basis of your idea, because it's not always obvious. It may be obvious to you when you're creating a concept, but sometimes I have to sit and puzzle a bit to try and understand exactly what's going on in a drawing. So there's as much annotation and description as is needed to understand it. So you've got 5 different ideas, and then from those you need to choose one concept design that you're going to take forward. And for that concept design, I want to see perspective or orthographic drawings and annotations that explain how that's going to work, identifies the key aspects, and says anything that you think needs some more thought putting into it. And then you're asked to also include a reflective account. So an account of how you generated your ideas and how you selected the one that you chose. So try to use different creative thinking methods and techniques, so that even if you're not conscious of having done it at the time, look back, reflect on it, and think, okay, so that was an example of associative thinking, or oh yeah, I used a random stimulus there because I was looking at the pepper pot and it reminded me of Helter Skelters, or that kind of thing. Just try to reflect back and to identify what you were doing. And in this reflection, you need to discuss the creative approaches that you took. You need to have your criteria that you used for evaluating and selecting, the points that you considered when you were turning your rough idea from the 5 ideas into a concept design. How much did you have to refine it, for example? What had you not thought about when you were doing the rough sketches and you suddenly realized, I don't know how that would work, how that would fit together. And you also need to describe the research that you did to stimulate your ideas. So that might include references, because obviously you don't do this in a vacuum. You want to look around and see what other people have come up with and to use those to spark the ideas that you have. So this is all related to assessment activity 5.3. So what am I going to be looking for in this? Well, obviously you need to submit everything that you've been asked for, but I'll be looking really specifically to see that you've used a variety of methods or techniques to generate your ideas, and also that you've reflected well on your creative thinking process. Section 3 is the layout design section. And in many ways, you've had a really good rehearsal with this, with the IKEA hack, because what you need to include are some rough orthographic drawings to show at least 3 alternative layout designs. In other words, 3 different ways in which you might realize your concept design. So when you're designing your concept design for section 2, don't pin yourself down so much that you haven't got room to reconfigure it and to think about doing things slightly differently. So you'll be doing rough orthographic drawings, and you'll also have an account, and that account has got 2 aspects to it. Firstly, you'll be discussing the layout design process and the configuration design approaches that you took, and you've already done that with your IKEA hack. You had to think about different approaches to configuration. Some people used geometric things like symmetry or translation. Other people base their ideas using an existing configuration and varying it. So look again at book 4, chapters 1 and 2, if you need any help on that. And the other thing that you need to have in your account is a discussion of your selection of the final layout, and you need to use, again, just like TMA03, at least 2 of the 5 functions that are discussed in book 4, chapters 2 and 3. So using those functions to help you to select the chosen configuration that you've designed. And then you're having done the rough stuff and discussed it very much as you've done in TMA03, then you do some dimensioned orthographic drawings with your final selection. And these should be front, side and top views, or possibly a section if needed. And obviously that could be a CAD model if you're someone who is proficient at CAD, and a lot of people in my group are. So assessment activity 5.4 is where you find out more information. So what will I be looking for in section 3? I'm going to be looking to see that you've used a variety of approaches to layout and configuration design, much as I did in TMA03. I'm going to be looking for an ability to justify the decisions that you've made about your configuration, and also for your ability to communicate those configurations with the appropriate drawings. Note, you don't need to do perspective drawings at this stage. Section 4 is really where block 5 comes into its own, and this is where you need to include an account of the materials that you choose and the reasons that you've chosen them, based on your research that you've done into the perceptions that users have of materials. which is assessment activity 5.2. So explain what the desired properties of those materials are and how they're going to satisfy the design brief, and specify the materials that you want to use in your own design. And then you need to give a brief account of the manufacturing and construction process that would be needed in order to make your design, in terms of joining, shaping, surface treatment, or any other manufacturing and construction processes that are relevant to what you've designed. And you need to refer to your annotated drawing in the previous section, in section 3, to show where different processes are needed. So this is really trying to give you the experience of thinking about how something that you've designed on paper might actually be made in reality, how it might be implemented. And in this section, I'll be looking for an appropriate choice of materials and manufacturing methods that respond well to the design brief. So remember, sustainability, conservation are important factors. So for example, you may wish to try to avoid using plastics because they have their own inherent sustainability issues. On the other hand, they might be appropriate for a particular design that you're thinking of. And the final section is where you present your final design. We want to see images, annotations. They might be drawings, hand-drawn drawings. It might be CAD. It might even be photos of a 3D model if you've gone that far. Somebody made a wonderful, actually built their IKEA hack for TMA03. I won't name any names, but it was brilliant to see that. So, as well as your final design that's presented, you need to either have a brief pitch that persuasively says what the advantages of your particular design are and what its concept is. Or if you prefer to, you can talk about the lessons that you've learned and how you've applied your learning from across the module on 3 of these 5 different perspectives. So basically related to the blocks: usability, technical integrity, aesthetics, which can include style and brand image if you want to, or sustainability, or manufacturing issues. So it's up to you. If you're someone who prefers to sell an idea, then your brief pitch might be the thing to do. If you're someone who rather reflect on what you've actually learned, then thinking about what you've learned and using 3 of the perspectives to do that would be really good. Either way, you'll be doing that alongside a presentation of your final design, which I'm expecting would probably be a perspective drawing or model. And in this final section, I'll be looking for your ability to communicate a design idea through drawing, and also your ability to communicate a design idea in writing, if you choose the doing a pitch, or if you choose to look at the lessons that you've learned to show. I'll be looking to see that you understood the concepts and principles that have been learnt in the module. And finally, just some posters from our annual exhibition from last year, just to show the variety of ideas that people came up with in relation to this very same project. You've got a refreshment kiosk, got some receptacle, specially designed receptacles for recycling. Someone else looked at possible way in which to make a flat path for users, disabled users, in order to see the site. Someone else looked at a game, and someone else at some boards that might be used to engage students. These are posters that have kind of based on the final TMA. They're not the actual final TMA, but just to show you that there's a huge variety of ways in which people tackle these things. Some are more beautiful than others in the way that they're rendered, but they're all really nice, valid ideas, and I'm sure yours will be too. Obviously, if you have any questions, do please contact me, but hopefully you'll have some enjoyment as you do this.